Ever wonder what order you should be pulling money from your retirement accounts? Well, we're going to talk about that concept this week here with Sean on Retirement Elevated.
Let us help you reach your peak in retirement. It's time for Retirement Elevated with Sean Lee.
Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast with Sean Lee and myself as we talk investing, finance, and retirement. And this week we're going to just spend a couple minutes talking about, the accounts that we have, and is there an order? Is there a sequence we should be pulling these from? I think the industry says there is. I think different advisors have different thoughts on that. So we're going to get Sean's thoughts on that this week here on the program. And of course, if you've got some questions, need some help, reach out to the team and sit down with them at Elevated Retirement Group. They can help you get to and through your retirement journey. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast as well while you are checking them out online at elevatemyretirement.com. Get yourself some time on the calendar that way as well. At elevatemyretirement.com. Lots of good tools, tips, and resources there for you to check out. What's up, my friend? How you doing this week?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I am hanging in there. You and I were just chatting. It's 1,000 degrees, you said, where you're at, and it's swamp fever where I'm at. We're in the tropical storm throes. Debbie's hitting us at the time we're taping this here, you and I, and it was not as bad as I think it's expected for my area. So I've been joking that she's just a little Debbie.
Well, it is brutal here. I mean, it's 100 plus degrees and just dry heat.
Yeah, I hear you. I said that to my friend today, and he groaned. He's like, but little Debbie's are great. And I was like, yeah, but not this one. So anyway, I hope everybody's doing all right. So, hey, listen, let's talk about this thing right here. You wanted to bring this up. You were talking to me as we were getting started and said that, this is kind of a standard question. Sometimes people wonder, okay, I've spent years building this stuff up. I got these various accounts. What's like the ideal strategy to pull, when do I start taking money from which one and which order, I suppose? Is there a rhyme or reason? Is it person specific or, enlighten us here?
There are a lot of viewpoints on how to get money out. And that's one of the bigger questions that we get, right? Is, all right, I've saved money in my brokerage account, in my Roth IRA, in my 401k, I've got all these different areas where I've saved money. How do we get it out now?
Right.
And unfortunately, there's rules of thumb, and then there's what works for you individually. And in a lot of cases, those aren't always the same thing. And so when we start to look at withdrawing assets, advisors historically, and not all advisors, but a lot of advisors have been taught that you pull assets out of accounts sequentially.
Okay.
So what does that mean? It's you pick a type of tax account that's taxed one way, you pull all the assets out of that, and then you move to the next account, you pull all the assets out of that, you move to the next account, you pull all the assets out of that. And historically, I'm looking at this MoneyWise article that I sent over that I was reading the other day, and this is like the perfect example of what I believe we should not do.
Okay.
And this article says, here's a rule of thumb for many retirees. And what you should do, air quotes, is pull money out of all of your cash account first, your taxable account first. And you've built cash reserves up past your emergency fund, and start to take withdrawals out of that account first, because that's the least taxable account, and that's the account that's not going to be affected by inflation. You're just able to withdraw money from that.
From your regular, like your money markets or your savings or whatever, right?
Yeah, and historically it hasn't earned a great rate of return, but you want to make sure that you leave your emergency accounts alone. So keep an emergency fund, but
okay, so you definitely disagree with that.
Yeah, I don't. And here's why. If I pull all the money out of my taxable account first, and then I move into my into my cash account, and then I move into my taxable account, which is my tax deferred, my retirement accounts, a couple of things are going to happen. So the second that I move away and I'm sequentially withdrawing from cash to tax deferred, now I've got a tax issue. So anything that I pull out of my retirement accounts is seen as taxable income. But what happens then if down the road I've drained my cash account and I decide that I need to replace my roof, or I need to buy a new car, or I've got that once-in-a-lifetime trip that I want to go on, and the only place that I can pull money from is my tax-deferred account. Well, now I'm setting myself up for just a an additional tax burden in that year. And if I don't do it right, or if I'm pulling out too much money from that account, I'm running the risk of running into higher Medicare premiums and
right. You're increasing your IRMA, right? Which a lot of people don't realize that when you're changing your income levels, right, that changes that IRMA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm potentially having Social Security be taxed at a higher level. So, this idea of sequential withdrawals, pulling money out of your cash accounts and moving to your tax deferred, and then that last line of defense are your tax-free accounts, which, Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, et cetera, letting those grow. There's mathematics, and we've ran this from a planning perspective. Mathematics show that's worse off for somebody if they sequentially pull money out of their accounts than if they simultaneously pull money out of accounts.
Interesting.
So what do we mean by simultaneously? Like that same person who has cash, tax deferred, and tax free, instead of pulling all their income and draining out their cash account, and then draining out their tax deferred accounts, and then draining out their Roth accounts or their tax free, sitting down with an advisor and mathematically figuring out, all right, I've got all these different areas where money is placed that's all taxed differently. How do I simultaneously pull out of each account at the same time, get the same income, and create some longevity of my plan? Now, by doing so, a couple of things happen. If I'm sequentially pulling money out, once I hit that tax deferred, everything's taxable. I've got a larger tax burden, right? But if I'm simultaneously pulling out of my cash account and my Roth account in conjunction with my tax deferred, my IRA accounts, I don't have to pull as much out of my IRAs. I'm putting less stress on that. I'm paying less in taxes, and I have some tax control over my unique situation, because now I'm not stuck with one choice, right?
Gotcha.
One choice where I got to pull all my money out of my tax deferred account, and I'm at the whim of whatever the government decides.
Interesting. And, so you pulled this up on one account or one, news feed, and we're looking. And so while you were talking, I typed in, this is the question that we're talking about today. And on Schwab, it says, follow this order if you can. And it says, start with your RMDs, then tap interest and dividends, then go cash out mature bonds and CDs and things of that nature. So it's interesting. Like always, you can get a bunch of different responses based on just the same question. Which does make people go, well, what in the heck do I do, right? So I think that's where, again, it comes back to sitting down with, professional and working through it for your situation so that you can figure out the best, formula for you, right? And of course, everybody's philosophy is going to be a little bit different, Sean. So, when you're sitting down and meeting with folks like yourself, that gives them the end user, the potential client, the option to go, yeah, I think I feel comfortable with this strategy versus that. Is that fair?
Well, and just by putting a little thought into a plan, and we've done this, we've done samples of this, but where the real power lies is when you're sitting down with a real family, and you can say, hey, listen, if we tweak your income strategy just a little bit, this is the exact impact it's going to have on your plan.
And you can show that, which I think is really helpful nowadays with the software. It's so great, right? Because you can say, okay, here's what happens if we do, model A, right?
Right. If we follow the path that you're on, here's how long it's going to take for your money to run out, and here's your probability of success. If we simultaneously pull money out of accounts and we put a little bit of thought into it, and in a lot of cases with the IRAs, all right, let's pull out the required minimum distribution amount, like the amount that's equal to the required minimum distribution, and then filter the other incomes around if you can. Not everybody has that flexibility to do that, but that's where the power comes in. And then we can say, all right, if we do it this way, it's going to have a $137,332 impact on your plan, for example.
Right.
And it's going to save you, $40,000 in taxes over the life of the plan based on current tax law, et cetera, all things being equal.
And that's the great part. I mean, to me, I think sitting down and looking at that, I was just talking with an advisor yesterday that was going through and showing me a sample plan. As a matter of fact, when you brought up IRMA, it was showing what was happening by doing Roth conversions and dealing with some of the tax issues earlier on versus what would happen later on. And the big difference that it made in this particular person's sample scenario was massive. They went from spending, I think, like 250 some odd thousand over the course of their retirement, projected retirement years on the different fees that they have to pay in IRMA and whatnot, down to like 60 something, right? Just by changing some of the stuff around. So it was pretty massive and very impactful to see how that stuff works. And I think a lot of people don't realize that when you pull one lever, like an income lever of any kind, Sean, it really does kind of, what is that, the Rube Goldberg machine? Is it like the Build a Better Mousetrap, right? When you pull one lever, something else starts moving and you get like 3 or 4 things happening, and it can really cause this interesting cascade effect.
Well, and just by the Roth conversion discussion, if you're looking at and you're structuring incomes properly,
right,
and you've got it frees up the ability to potentially do some Roth conversions, because in a lot of cases, not all, if you're using IRA money for income, that's a big burden to then do conversions on top of it, right? So now don't get me wrong, sequential withdrawals may make sense. So using some of your cash early on to add Roth conversions at the same time may make some sense.
Okay.
But it does come down to planning, and determining when are you going to pull Social Security out also determines how you withdraw your assets, whether it's simultaneous or sequentially. Do you want to add in Roth conversions? Do you have big expenses coming? So there's a lot of thought and a lot of things that come into this.
There's definitely nuance for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, don't just say, hey, pull out your cash first, your tax deferred second, and your tax free third.
Right. It's not A, B, C, D for every single person. Gotcha. Yeah.
If it was that easy, advisors
you wouldn't have a job.
Wouldn't have a job.
Well, and I think that's where it gets so. I mean, again, the internet can be absolutely amazing and also ridiculously depressing and daunting at the same time, because there's so much information about every single solitary thing under the sun that you're weeding through. And this isn't news to anybody, right? But I mean, you're just weeding through like just buckets of information, and at some point you have to kind of say, okay, I'm not getting a grasp on this, I'm not getting a handle on this, or I'm not sure how I feel. So I need to sit down and really have these numbers ran for me and look at this stuff, in person to person, face to face, in black and white, and just see how, what are my options, right? And that's the whole point. That's the whole point of getting a strategy and a plan put together. So is there any, specific order? I guess the answer to the question on the podcast today is it depends.
No, there's not.
There's not. Okay. All right.
I don't think. I think it's unique, and rule of thumbs are made to be broken, and in a lot of cases, I just don't agree with them.
Yeah, and if you have your thumb in your glove the wrong way and you catch a fastball, you could break your thumb that way too.
It's going to hurt like
the
crazy.
Dickens. There you go.
Yeah.
I had to
PG.
I had to throw a baseball thing in there, so just to make Sean laugh. All right,
and
folks,
we're back. Baseball's back tonight.
There you go. So, all right, well, we're going to jump out this week. We'll be back with some more podcasts, and stay tuned for all sorts of good stuff coming the way. If you'd like to find out more information or want to get some time on the calendar or just check out the various things that the team has to offer, just stop by at elevatemyretirement.com. If you're already working with them, you already know all this stuff, and still no reason why you can't subscribe to the podcast to catch future episodes. But if you're not, or someone who might benefit from the message or maybe enjoy some of the content, share that information with them at elevatemyretirement.com. That's elevatemyretirement.com, and get started today with your consultation and conversation with Sean and his team, Elevated Retirement Group. So, Sean, thanks for hanging out, buddy. Appreciate you breaking it down.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon.
We'll catch you soon right here on the podcast. This is Retirement Elevated.
Investment advisory services offered through Elevated Capital Advisors, LLC, and SEC Registered Investment Advisor.